Hello, everyone, and welcome to the European Football Roundup. What I do is, especially if you're new here, I round up how all the Champions League teams did in their respective leagues, the results, any injuries that we need to be aware of, any people that are hitting form, and I go through them just in quick fire style, ready for the Champions League coming back around so nothing kind of catches us by surprise. But first of all, I've got a favour to ask. We are almost at 300 subscribers. I want you, if you're watching this video, to make sure that you are subscribed. Go down beneath this video and subscribe. We've got a little competition that might be announced soon, so definitely get subscribed and you'll have a chance of winning that competition once that is announced. We'll be back next week for the previews. Match day 3 is just around the corner, so let's get straight into the Champions League. So we're going to start off with an all Champions League clash. The first Champions League clash brings us to Madrid. It's Atletico Madrid against Real Madrid. Real Madrid coming away 2-1 winners. Valverde with the goal, 6.5 million in the game. He's on a bit of a goal streak at the minute. He's definitely someone that we need to keep having a look at. Rodrigo grabbing the first goal with a Tuchemeni assist. That Valverde goal could have very well been a Vinicius Junior goal. If you watched it on just Real Madrid are so clinical in attack, even without Benzema, they have won every single game they've played this season so far, and I don't think that looks like slowing up anytime soon. With Atletico Madrid, they were the better team to start off the match, and they came close to scoring themselves. Unfortunately, couldn't break through, and then all of a sudden Real Madrid go 2-0 up, and all they had to do was hold on. It took till in the last 10 minutes for Atletico Madrid to score Hermoso with the goal, and then in Atletico Madrid fashion, they got a red card. However, this is very debatable. If you watched the video, it doesn't look like a red. I think they were let off there, but that's just my opinion. But either way, Atletico Madrid, red cards go hand in hand. But overall, was a really good game, and Real Madrid coming away the victors. The second All Champions League clash came from Italy. It was AC Milan versus Napoli. This is a top of the table clash, which could potentially be one of these teams winning the Scudetto this year. AC Milan looked the more dangerous side. They just controlled the ball a lot better than Napoli did for large spells of this game. But Napoli have shown how dangerous they are attacking. The penalty, very controversial. And however, contact was made with the foot of the Napoli player, Cravadonna. And so VAR couldn't really overturn it. But when Politano, obviously with Zielinski missing the 2 penalties against Rangers, Politano seems to be their new penalty taker. So bear that in mind for Champions League. But by that point, Napoli, all they had to do was kind of sit back. Giroud getting a goal. The amount of times that AC Milan hit the crossbar, they were so close so many times. And I think just Giroud just being absolutely clinical. A Theo Hernandez assist, very dangerous as always. I wish he could just do more in the Champions League because I've owned him, but can't complain too much. But then Napoli, they grabbed that second goal. Simeone just nipping in front. You cannot give him that kind of chance. Overall, Napoli look very good, especially with Osimhen not recovered yet. So even with a second string striker, they are very dangerous. So let's finish off the teams in Spain. Barcelona winning 3-0, Lewandowski with another 2 goals, and Memphis Depay with that 3rd goal. They were just dominant all around, still unbeaten in the league. They drew 1 game though, so they're still second behind Real Madrid, but El Clasico is coming up very soon. They'll definitely have their eyes on that. I'm very excited for that. Benzema should be back for then as well, so that'll be a great game all around. I think something that is kind of slipped under the radar is that Barcelona have only conceded 1 goal in the league so far. Unfortunately, the Bayern Munich result didn't go their way, but I do think Barcelona will bounce back, especially with the way Bayern Munich are playing right now, which I'll touch on. But I think Barcelona could potentially top that group. Sevilla drew 1-1. So not having a striker in this team, I think, is what's hurting this team. The stats are great, 12 shots, but only one on target. Oliver Torres was the scorer, but they are currently sitting 15th in the table. They're not having a great Champions League campaign, and I do think that that is hurting, that the lack of striking options is really hurting their team because they're just essentially playing all wingers up front. And as great as they are pace wise, I do think that's hurting them in terms of physicality. And into Germany now, Bayern Munich have, after having three straight draws, have now lost to Augsburg 1-0. And there's now serious pressure on Nagelsmann. There's a lot of stuff coming out in the German press, especially with Thomas Tuchel being available for a management position, that they might get rid of Nagelsmann and put in Thomas Tuchel. A lot of people would prefer that, especially Bayern Munich fans. The rest of Germany, though, not so much. I think my opinion on it is that Nagelsmann should be given more time because he was brought in as a young manager for the long term. But with these type of teams, they expect nothing but to win trophies. So that ruthlessness is, I think, what's going to prevail here. Tuchel being available, I think it's just a matter of time. Dortmund winning 1-0 with a Mukoko goal. I think the biggest headline from this is the Royce injury. It looked very serious. He was stretched off. He was crying. And I think a lot of people in the fans and even sitting at home were crying as well because this looks like it will rule Royce out of another major tournament for Germany. He's not had the best luck in terms of injuries. So overall, out of all these German teams, though, in the domestic league, they are second behind Union Berlin. So they are doing the best domestically. But I think regardless of whether Tuchel joins Bayern Munich or not, I do think Bayern Munich will still be the champions at the end of the season. So Frankfurt, they've started to turn things round. They are now seventh. They beat Stuttgart 3-1. Rode, Kamada, and Jakic are the scorers. But it was against the run of play. But I think that's all that's needed is even if you're not dominating the ball, even if you're not playing your best football, you're still getting results. So Eintracht Frankfurt are really, really turning things around, which is something that I can't say about the next two teams. Leverkusen drew 1-1 with Werder. Still only the one win of the season. They are sitting just above the relegation zone. They are not looking great. Demerbe was the goal scorer. The team on paper is really, really good. They should be doing a lot better than what their what their position suggests. It's just something's not clicking, something's not gelling, and I think they really, really risk losing players in January, especially if, depending on what happened in the Champions League, if they made it to the Europa League, if they get knocked out altogether and they finish fourth, I do think they're at massive risk of losing some of these players because the transfer talk, transfer gossip was all over this team during the summer. Leipzig, they lost 3-0. They are still conceding for fun unless your name is Dortmund. They're just not connecting defensively. They never were really a great defensive team, but it's just not great. And I know that we were looking to potentially target some Leipzig players against Celtic for their back-to-back games. But I do think with their current form, we are at risk of potentially striking out with these options. So back to Italy for the next two teams. Juventus losing to the bottom of the table, Monza 1-0. Di Maria seeing a red card as well. Not great from Juventus, something that we all love to see as other fans in Italy. But the struggle is just about targeting them, especially with the back-to-back games against Maccabi Haifa. Do we do it? Do we not? I think their form is so unpredictable. It is a massive risk, and I do think that that's going to potentially have a big say in fantasy, especially with people potentially getting them, some people not. But we'll cover that next week. Allegri having to have a police escort out of the stadium, not great at all. The Inter losing 3-1, probably the surprise of the season so far. Udinese challenging for the top four. Barella was the scorer with a beautiful free kick, but following from that, despite all the possession, Udinese came back. The thing is, and I think what the problem with Inter was in this game, is that obviously with the five substitutions, they used three of them to change the back five. So I think halfway through a game, it wasn't even relentless pressure either. So they Gersons wasn't playing. They didn't bring on him. They and then they just changed the centre backs. And I don't think that was a great use of substitutes when you're trying to chase a game. Udinese were at home, but I do think that Inter should have done better there. And that might just be a bit of bias being an AC Milan fan, but Inter should have came home with the 3 points, but very happy for Udinese. They're doing really, really well. So now over to France. Paris Saint-Germain win 1-0 away to Lyon. Messi with the fifth minute goal. And obviously, there's the stat going around that now that brings him ahead of Ronaldo in terms of non-penalty goals. Uh, Crazy how they all track this kind of stuff. But it was a Neymar assist. That front three is absolutely unbelievable at the minute. And I think that some people might be looking to take them out. And I do not think that I don't think we need to, because they're just so good at the moment and just so dominant, still unbeaten. And I think that they can stay in our teams. Speaking of unbeaten teams, Marseille drew 1-1. They are still unbeaten, but Paris Saint-Germain and Marseille is next month after I think it's match day 4. So that's going to be very, very exciting. Again, Guendouzi was the scorer. I don't know why I paused so much there. Guendouzi was the scorer, and I think it's going to be a great game between Paris Saint-Germain and Marseille. Hopefully, if they still stay unbeaten. And now over to Portugal, where we now have 3 teams. So we need to, I guess, welcome Benfica to the podcast. Porto drew 1-1. Taremi with a 90 plus ninth minute penalty to equalise. They're currently third in the table. Overall, so good, but let's hope that they can get that defensive form back that we know Porto can have. Taremi again amongst the penalties, amongst the goals, and so he is someone that potentially could keep an eye out on when they have a good favourable matchup. Sporting lost 2-1. Marcus Edwards was the scorer. They had 74 possession, 74% possession. And I think that that's just something that has went with Sporting, that whenever they've lost, when they lost to Porto, when they lost this last game, they have dominated the game. They're just not clinical enough. And so even though they won against Tottenham, I do think that just that little something, once it clicks, Sporting are going to be a great force to be reckoned with. Maybe not in terms of challenging for the Champions League, but they'll be a thorn in big team sides. However, they're currently 8th in the table. And the new boys to at least this episode, Benfica won 5-0. They're sitting top of the table. Rafa Silva, Gonçalo Ramos, Neres, and Draxler were the scorers, with another clean sheet as well. Just that whole team is just really, really gelling nicely. It's going to be a great game, them against Paris Saint-Germain, and I am very, very excited to watch that. And now, just to finish off, quick fire for the rest of the teams. Ajax lost 2-1. Kudus, of course, was the goal scorer, so hopefully we still all have him. He's in great form, currently sitting second in the table behind PSV. Celtic lost 2-0 to St Mirren. Not very great, but we probably weren't targeting their assets anyways. A double header coming up for them, but they could be a team that we could target, especially with the form of the other team. Rangers win 2-1. Kolak getting both goals. He seems to be doing good. Obviously, Celtic Rangers, it's going to be between them for the title. And I think just any performances in Europe is going to be just a bonus. Bruges lost 3-0. They're losing ground on top place. Antwerp, who have won all 9 games so far. Bruges is in third place. So despite their heroics in Europe, that's not quite going across into the domestic league. Salzburg drew 1-1, with Sesko being the goal scorer. Unfortunate not to win with the stats that they had in that game. Very, very dominant attacking wise, just very leaky in defense. But I think we kind of saw that from their European performances as well. Shakhtar winning 1-0, tied at the top of the table. Shved was not in the starting lineup and he wasn't on the bench either. So there it might have been an injury. It's quite hard to try and find out this news because all of the reports are in Ukrainian. So if you are Ukrainian and you watch Shakhtar, let me know if Shved is injured. Copenhagen lose to Midtjylland. Midtjylland, who were, I guess, old guests on the podcast. I wouldn't say guests, but old team that we talked about. Darami was the goal scorer for that. Dynamo Zagreb won 2-1. Ademi and Patkovic were the scorers. Zagreb was in good form, have been given teams a really, really hard time, and I think they're continuing their form quite well. So that is something we need to keep an eye on. Maccabi Haifa played yesterday, lost 3-0, but they also play later today at the time of recording in true FIFA career mode style. Nothing to really shout about, not really much rotation either. So I don't know how that will work in terms of 2 games in 24 hours. And then Victoria Plzeň won in 3-0. But in true Plzeň fashion, we won't mention any of the scorers. Just kidding. Chori scored a pen, Mosquera and Klavac were the scorers. That rounds up this week's edition of the European Football Roundup. Make sure to subscribe if you've stuck around, leave a like on the video, and definitely check out our preview podcasts coming out at the end of the week for the next round of fixtures, especially for who should we target on wildcards. Look forward to seeing you there, and thank you for watching.